Hi guys, it's me, Christopher Robert Taylor, Sovereign Harmony. It's been a while, and again, forgive the editing. I know I usually like to cut out the beginnings and endings, but you're gonna watch me come in and out. For now anyway, until I get some better software. So, we haven't spoken in a while. I think it was November, the last time I put out a video, and I talked all about the retrograde train, okay? And that's Mercury, Venus, and Mars. These three personal planets have been doing their retrograde thing. We're still in it. We're a good ways through it now, and it's going to be coming to an end here by early to midsummer. So I wanted to give you a little update about that retrograde train, as well as what's coming up the next couple of months. Right now, today is March 23rd. It's Sunday. The next couple of months are pretty interesting. We have a couple of eclipses coming up. As you know, I like to talk about the eclipses, what it means. Eclipses are generally times of big shifts, and it's important, I think, to understand what we're dealing with, because we can kind of look back a few weeks after these eclipses and in retrospect think, whoa, what just happened here? So this is a way to get our heads around that before it happens. So anyway, welcome back. I appreciate your listening, and your feedback on YouTube and everything. And you might notice something different about me. I put on a little bit of weight. And that's a good thing. I was kind of losing quite a bit of weight there for a while, couldn't keep it on. So my health has definitely returned. You might be able to notice that a little bit anyway. And especially this past winter has been, pretty good for that, for me. And so I'm hoping you guys are doing well, and everything, that you're getting through this retrograde train okay, and that you're ready for the eclipses that are coming up in April. So just to rehash, if you've been watching my videos, you can go back to spring of 2012. And I've been talking about the Uranus in Aries squaring Pluto in Capricorn. This kind of big shifting period that's from the spring of 2012 right on through about the spring of 2015. So here we are about 2/3 of the way through it. Woo! We're making our way. We're about 2 years down, 1 year to go. Okay, and this is a pretty intense time. It's reflective back to the 1960s when Pluto and Uranus were conjunct. And they initiated this new period of great societal upheaval, essentially, okay? And so what we're doing now, again, is making decisions based on the seeds we planted back in the 60s that will spawn from here forth, okay? So it's a very important time for decision making. And it's this area of the chart, this Uranus-Pluto square, Uranus in Aries again, Pluto in Capricorn, that's going to be getting lit up in April. So along with the eclipses that are coming up, we're going to have this, what's called a grand cross, but it's going to be a grand cross in the cardinal signs. And a grand cross essentially is like a big square in the zodiac. So all of the signs that are 3 signs away from each other, they kind of form what looks like a square with each side opposing each other. Okay, so it looks kind of like a square with X's, with an X in the middle of it, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. And Pluto and Uranus are part of it, okay? Because one side of that 4-sided square is that Pluto-Uranus square, okay? But we just happen to have Jupiter and Mars in on the action. And we'll get to that in a second. I want to rehash the retrograde train. Just to review, last I spoke with you, I believe it was early to mid-November. And at that time, we were just coming out of a Mercury retrograde. And I was just introducing you to the concept of Venus retrograde that was on its way. Venus retrograde has come and gone. The shadow and everything, okay? And that Venus retrograde was in Capricorn, and so it was all about really restructuring our priorities in life. What is important. So we kind of go through life with a certain habit, or certain habits of what is important to us, and at certain times in life we have to shift that in order to grow, okay? Because sometimes those habits lock us into a certain pattern. And so this period has been about letting go of things that have been important to us and opening up to new things that now are important to us, okay? And so when it comes to what we value in life and how we prioritize life, the people in our lives are going to be reflective of that. That's why Venus rules things like relationships, okay? Because we're making it more of a priority to have certain people in our lives and less of a priority for others, etc., okay? But also money comes into there. That's why Venus rules money, because what we have or don't have, or what we get rid of, is reflective of what we prioritize. What we spend our money on is reflective of what we value in life, okay? So both of these areas generally are always affected with Venus retrogrades. So we're kind of shifting the people in our lives, shifting the things in our lives, to better reflect a set of priorities that is in line with our authentic self as it is now, not as it has been. because we're always in a state of evolution, always moving forward. So these retrogrades are great times to get in touch with where we've been, what isn't working anymore, and how to shift that, okay? So that's been the Venus retrograde, and that was, I think it started right around the winter solstice just before Christmas, and it ended in late January, okay? And the shadow period was roughly late November, right on through about early March. So here we are, March 23rd, which is just a few weeks ago, Venus finally got out of its shadow. So that whole period really from late November right on until early March really was this shifting of our priorities, okay? And it's almost like our to-do list went from like what used to be on top of it now is maybe third in line, and what was on the bottom of it or not even on it, maybe first in line, okay? And that's what the whole point of this period has been, okay? And Mercury retrogrades, like we know, those happen 3 times a year. They're not as rare, but they do have their purpose and everything. And the most recent Mercury retrograde we had was in February. So we had the one back in November that we were just coming out of the last time we spoke, but we also just had one that's come and gone, just like the Venus retrograde, and that was in February. And the shadow for that was like late January, right on until early March, early to mid-March. So it just ended that one as well. But February 6th to February 28th was the Mercury retrograde period, and that one was in the sign of Pisces back into Aquarius. And so we were really kind of shifting in terms of our thoughts as far as what is possible for us, okay? You know, what are the possibilities in life? And, you know, how we can put that out in the world in some way. And so we've had to go through, kind of an inward journey to say, what is it I really want? You know, not what's practical, but what do I really want if my dreams could be the first thing in line? And how do I put that into greater society? How do I plug that into society in a way that's useful to them? And it isn't just like this thing that I'm creating that no one else can understand. And so that's been a big part of February, plus or minus a few weeks, okay? But now that we're in this Mars retrograde, this is important because we're right in the thick of this retro period. Mars entered its shadow around Christmas, okay? It didn't go retrograde technically until right around March 1st, February 28th, March 1st, right around the start of March, okay? So it's pretty freshly retrograde. Just 3 weeks in, and Mars goes retrograde about 2.5 months. So it will be retrograde from early March right on through mid to late May. I believe it's May 21st-ish, something like that. Don't quote me on that. That it will go direct, okay? And it won't get out of its shadow until early to mid-July. So we've got a while with this period. We're talking late Christmas time till after the 4th of July as far as the shadow period goes, with the actual retrograde being early March to mid to late May, okay? And this is a Mars retrograde in Libra. Libra, if you don't know, is a sign of relationships. It is the sign of the other, the reflection of self. Aries being the first sign of the zodiac is the self. When we get to the 7th sign, Libra, the opposite of Aries, this is the other, okay? The reflection, the mirror, okay? And so in Mars, anytime Mars is retrograde, generally, it has to do with us reorganizing how we take action in the world. Mars deals with how we take action. If it's backing up, then we're rethinking our action principles. So here's the way I always do it. If people say, well, here's how I wash my car. Here's how I get groceries for my house. Here's how I do that. These are little examples, but there's also things like, here's what I say when my wife says that. Here's what I do. There's just certain actions, almost like it's out of a book, and we get into these habitual patterns of action and how we react in our relationships with other people. If my boss does this, I'm gonna say this. If you could fill in the blank with any kind of relationship, whether it's work, family, romantic, doesn't matter. The point is our habitual habit patterns, our action patterns, are in a state of shift right now, okay? And so what's happening is we're being faced with situations in life right now that we would normally react in a certain way. We would normally take action in a certain way in reaction to what's going on. And what we're being forced to do, it's almost like we know that this isn't going to work. For whatever reason, we're very clear. We either try it and it absolutely doesn't work, so it shows us it doesn't work, or we're getting intuitive inclinations that this way isn't going to work anymore. My way doesn't work anymore. What other options are there? And so this Mars retrograde is the process of discovering the other options, the other ways, the other methods, okay? So we don't have to be so addicted to and so locked into all the patterns that we have always had. We can't say, well, in all of my relationships, this is what I always do in that situation. This is the time to change that. Okay, so if you find yourself trying to defend your old ways, you're probably feeling pretty frustrated, probably feeling like life is not working out. If you're open to adjusting, you're going to find that the other options come to you easily. You understand? So it's up to us whether we want to struggle with other options coming into our life by trying to hold on to our way and trying to be closed off to other ways, or we can just be open to those other ways and they'll come flying in. Okay? So retrogrades are not negative periods. They're excellent periods for reorganizing, but you have to be open to the reorganization. If you're not open to the reorganization, well, you're going to struggle. It's going to be kind of a hellish experience, isn't it? If everything coming at you is different and you want it to be the same, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to suffer. So that it's not something, you know, we're not victims of this, but it's important to understand what's going on, because this Mars retrograde is also a big piece of the puzzle for not only the eclipses coming up, but that cardinal grand cross right in between the eclipses. Okay, and so that'll kind of lead us into this discussion coming up for the next 2 months. Okay, and so eclipses, again, they're time periods. It's almost like, I always think of it like train track shifting. You're on one track and then you link in another track and you can kind of fly off in a different direction. Okay, that's what eclipse periods are. They always happen in twos. You're going to have a new moon that is eclipsed. So in other words, the moon is going over the sun. That's called the solar eclipse. And you're also going to have the full moon side of the eclipse, which is when you're looking at the moon at night, the sun is on the other side of the earth, and it's the earth's shadow that's in the way that covers the moon. Okay, and in this case, we're going to have the lunar eclipse, that full moon, the moon that's eclipsed by the earth's shadow first, around April 15th. Okay, so tax day, yay! And we'll get to that in just a minute. And the next one, the solar eclipse, which will be when the moon, you know, it's a new moon, so the moon and the sun are in the same location, and they'll be so much in the same location that the moon will actually cover this part, part of the sun. That will be April 28th. So April 15th, April 28th. And lo and behold, when does this cardinal grand cross happen? Well, this actually spans about a 3 or 4 day period, and it's almost exactly dead center in the middle of this eclipse period. So if you think of the eclipses as like, you don't want to do too much right before or during, and you kind of wait till after, because things have to unfold through this very rapid, like 2 week period basically. Okay, and within that we're going to have this cardinal grand cross, which is going to ignite this longer term 3-year Uranus-Pluto square. It's also going to ignite the Mars retrograde, because remember, Mars will still be retrograde all the way until May, and that's going to be in Libra, the cardinal sign of Libra, squaring the Pluto in Capricorn and opposing Uranus in Aries. You see, and they're all going to be in these cardinal signs. And the final piece of that puzzle is Jupiter up in Cancer, and Cancer is it's the sign opposite of Capricorn, so Jupiter will be opposite Pluto, squaring Mars, squaring Uranus. All right, so these are the 4 planets involved: Uranus, Pluto, and then Jupiter and Mars. And Mars is this retrograde Mars we're talking about. And it just so happens that the April 15th lunar eclipse is going to be pretty close to that Mars. It's going to land in Libra, pretty close to that Mars in Libra. Okay, and the north node of the moon, which we don't need to get into right here. But the point is, there's going to be a lot of energy for that cardinal cross just a few days before it happens. So the period of the 20th to the 23rd is that grand cardinal cross. So it's April 15th, lunar eclipse, that's connected with the Mars retrograde. Then we have the cardinal grand cross, April 20th and 23rd, and then April 28th, just a few days later, we have this new moon solar eclipse in Taurus, which just so happens to be forming an aspect to Jupiter, which is the final leg of this kind of puzzle here that we're talking about. So lots of stuff going on. April's pretty intense, but the way I see it is, I don't think we're going to see the manifestation unfold until about mid to late May, so about a month later. So take this mid to late April period as the time when everything is actually shifting, but we don't get to see it until it's in retrospect about a month later. Okay, that's not that much time, but that's the way I'm looking at it. Is there'll be some big things happening in April, but we won't understand the repercussions of them until May. That's the best way to look at it. So the first part of this, we still have, again, we have Mars retrograde this whole time from early March into mid to late May, and we come to April 15th. Okay, it's tax day. It's this lunar eclipse. It's right with Mars there in Libra, and this is a lunar eclipse because it's on the north node of the moon. It signifies this real culmination of what we've been building before. So there's nothing new coming in for this April 15th lunar eclipse. And again, it's not instant. I think it's going to take about a month for it to really bleed out. So we won't really see what that manifestation is till about a month later, when Mars goes direct in mid to late May. Okay, and that's going to really signify when a lot of this April energy really gets to just to move forward. That's when we're basically coming up to the point where we've figured out our new methods for approaching relationships, our new methods for finding balance with other people, and finding diplomacy is another way to look at that. So it won't be till mid to late May, but this April time period is going to really stimulate that. Okay, but the point is, April 15th lunar eclipse, the energy around it has to do with culminating what's already been building, what we've been building. And since Uranus has been in Aries since 2010, and this has been a big part of this theme of this, what is this big shift, this big cardinal shift? Cardinal signs are new beginnings, okay? We're all learning how to be more sovereign and independent. That's my tagline, is sovereign harmony. And I used it for a reason. And the idea being that we're learning how to self-generate, basically. Self-empowerment, coming from within rather than reacting from without. It's a new way of being, and this new way of being shifts all of our relationships, and that's a big part of what this lunar eclipse is. It's like the culmination of all the shifts in our relationships, as a result of all the independent self-generation that we've been learning how to do over time. Okay, and in this Mars retrograde, it makes sense that it's all happening together, because we are now figuring out the new ways to approach the world as we are now, authentically, rather than just as some adaptive form to what others expect of us. Okay, and so that's a lot of what this energy is about in a lunar eclipse, is the culmination of everything we've been building for the last several years associated with sovereignty and self-generation, self-empowerment. Okay, and then when we get to this Grand Cardinal Cross, that it's between the signs of Capricorn, Cancer, and Libra, Aries. Those are the 4 cardinal signs. It's a pretty intense shift in focus, where we're taking the greater theme over the last 3 years with that Uranus-Pluto, which is the independence, Uranus and Aries, and Pluto and Capricorn, which is a total transformation of all the structures and foundations that support who we are. Okay, if you look at that collectively, we can think of that as all the laws and things that we have in place, all the laws that govern how society works. They're all based on a certain assumption about people, and with all of this new independent action and new sovereignty and new self-generation that's been forming, we need new structures to support that. It's like the old structure just doesn't support that new reality. Okay, and so that's a big part of this shift that's going on. And with Mars getting thrown in there, this is just showing us that that's where our action is happening. Our action is happening in Libra. We're actually having to consciously shift how we take action, how we interact with people, because we are new people and they are new people. And so we can't just go, we can't just behave with our best friend from childhood, or our parents, or someone that we've formed relationships with in the past. We have to adjust how those relationships are acting now in the present. And that's a big part of that. And on a societal level, it's like, if people are more independent and more self-generating, then we need more structures to support that, and we need to have a better relationship between authority and whatever is deemed non-authority. In my opinion, we are all our own authority. Sovereign authority is derived from within, and that's what we're shifting into, is this idea of getting out of being governed by the outside and governing from within. Okay, and then that Jupiter and Cancer aspect of this Grand Cardinal Cross, again, this April 20th to 23rd kind of time period. This is Jupiter and Cancer has to do with the expansion of our sense of safety, expansion of our security. So feeling more secure, just because, basically. But that can show itself in this shift has a lot to do with how we're going to be manifesting a new sense of comfort, a new sense of security and safety that comes from sovereign derivement of authority, sovereign derivement of energy and power. Okay, and so it's a positive thing. We're really evolving here fast, the way I see it. Okay, and then when we get to the end of April, we have this solar eclipse. This is in Taurus, about 9 degrees Taurus, and it just so happens it's very, very pleasantly kind of halfway in between Jupiter and Cancer, again stimulating this cardinal cross, and this Neptune Chiron in Pisces. Okay, and so with the solar eclipses in general, especially on the south node like this one, this really signifies almost like something getting cut out. Eclipses bring in brand new things, but they also cut out things that have been, okay? So it's really, since it's the sign of Taurus, we're talking about cutting out our sense of really money, the way we know it. And so on a personal level, understand that anything that does get cut out, anything we rely on, that we think we need to rely on in terms of money flow or whatnot, it's opening the doorway for the true money, the true currency. Currency is just a flow between energies, right? It's a higher energy and a lower energy, and there's a flow or a current. And the way that you get power is you have to tap into a flow or a current, right? So money is not power. Money is the flow into which you tap to derive power. Do you understand? And we're all coming to this kind of awareness in our own way, that money is not a thing. Money is a flow of things. Money is worthless unless it's moving. It's just a piece of paper unless it's being exchanged for something. So only in its flow can you tap power out of it. Just like hydroelectric power, you flow water, or a wind turbine, you flow air, and you derive power by tapping into that flow. It's the exact same thing. So as long as money is flowing and changing hands, that's when you can derive power from it. You can't derive power from money if it's not flowing. That's the key thing. And for whatever that's worth to you, that is the kind of conceptual nature that we're shifting into in terms of how we even think of money, okay? So I think there's going to be big things collectively speaking with regards to global finance. I've been talking about this forever, but I really think that things are in the works now. And there could be some really positive shifts, I think, in terms of global economy, which may or may not be in the best interest of someone like, say, the United States of America, who have kind of had control over these flows for a long time, and therefore have had control over the tapping into those flows or the power associated with it. And this, I think, is going to shift in a very positive way for everyone, including the people of the United States of America. So when I say the United States, I mean more or less the people in power in the United States. They might have the most to lose in this kind of a shift. But any other person anywhere in the world, including the US, is going to benefit from any kind of shifts that come from this, the way I see it anyway. So I think mid to late April has a lot to do with this, in my opinion. I really do. Not that things are going to happen in mid to late April, but I think this summer is going to really start with, especially once you hit mid to late May, it'll really open up the spigot for this shift that happens in April to pour forth. There may be meetings and things in April, for example, on a global scale, that then lead to action down the line. And it may be action 6 to 12 months from now. We don't know. But in retrospect, I think April 2014 will, there will be something that we can say historically that happened there in that regard. Personally speaking, it's the same kind of thing. April is going to be a big month when we're making decisions about how we are now taking action, for example. How we are now either showing up or blocking ourselves from showing up in the world or at work or in life in some way, okay? We're going to be making some big decisions in April. And the results of those decisions are going to really show themselves once we get to the summer and into the fall, okay? And just note that with that culmination energy also happening in April, we're also going to just start seeing that our lives are a reflection of this shift in relationships that we've been working on as a reaction to working on our sovereign derivement or our self-generation and self-empowerment, okay? So you get more empowered in yourself, you're going to have to shift how you interact with others. It's just the way it is. And so we're coming to the point where, what does that all mean? And how does my life now look with this new way of being? And so, ride the wave. I'm riding the wave. It's interesting. It's also interesting. I have my first, this has been kind of crazy lately with these shifts in priorities, the Venus retrograde. I suddenly find myself here in San Diego. I've been up in Sacramento most of my videos here. I'm now in San Diego. And that included a trip back east for a couple months. And then now I'm back here. So kind of craziness going on in that regard. But now I'm working full time for the first time in years. And I'm actually working on a kind of a larger scale concept that's similar to this sovereign harmony concept of sovereign derivement, self-generation. I'm actually a project manager for a program called self-generation incentives, okay? So it is basically, helping homeowners and small business owners derive their own energy for the grid. And of course, it's throwing utilities up in arms in certain ways. There are things that they don't agree with, etc. but I see it all from the bigger picture, and I step back. And, it's just a job, but you step back and I think, wow, this is interesting. How life has found me here, and I talk about self-generation and self-empowerment all the time, and this is just the macrocosmic expression of that microcosmic self. You see, and it's interesting. So I'm getting a lot of good information just by kind of working there and understanding, the shift in power that's going on out in the world. So thank you for joining me. Please do chime in on YouTube if you have questions or comments, and please do share. I hope you enjoy this spring. It should be pretty interesting, to say the least. It's what we've created is coming, and don't fear the changes. That's all I can say, because it's all, in my opinion, it all feels really good. But we're in a shifty time. Just don't be afraid to do things differently. And if you're not afraid to do things differently, you're going to pass through this with flying colors. Okay? So thanks a lot. Happy springtime, and we'll check in next time. Bye-bye.